Huh. I just noticed this is zero carbs.
Yeah. We're supposed to talk smack about the carnivore diet first, yes? It's not a terrible diet for muscle.
Obviously, there's been a major shift. I went from essentially consuming carbs a day to now upwards of 500 grams of carbs per day. Calories equated, I ended up dropping weight.
How the hell did that make? In a sense, you've been lean for like ever?
Being this young person coming up in the industry and always having to be sharp and lean for social media, what is your mind like around your body? So you know, you're kind of like, I'm really honestly cool with whatever happens.
After age 18 or so, those small differences between carbs and no carbs can for you mean 50% muscle gain difference. And we're here to tell you that the mainstream of science shows that you can eat all meats and be very healthy, and you can eat all plants and be insanely healthy if you just stick to minimally processed, awesome foods.
I had progressed for almost 5 years using a low-carb, ketogenic, and carnivore, eventually carnivore approach. After I hit 18 years old, I noticed this plateau where my strength was stagnant. My muscle building was not progressing as much as I'd like it to. That implementation of carbohydrates after so long of not having it, that was what I needed to progress my training more.
It definitely helped quite a bit, and you're just like full as hell and lean still. So now we're gonna really push hard.
Okay, so today's video is going to be a little bit of a different style video. You guys have seen all of my recent training videos or not recent training videos where the majority of them are all cut up and edited to make me look massive and primarily focused on the training. I wanted to do a sit down video where I discuss some of the recent somewhat major adjustments that I've made to both my training as well as my nutrition in particular, which all of you seem to be very interested in based on the views on the shorts and things like that. So I know carnivore and diets in general are the hot topic. I've got two very special guests here who are extremely intelligent, extremely knowledgeable, both in the bodybuilding realm and outside of that. We've got the one and only Dr. Mike Israetel, who you guys already know and love, and the one and only Mr. Jared Feather with the D.
Feathers.
Today, we're going to be running through the adjustments that I've made with my training and nutrition, and you guys are going to see some of the differences. I'm going to see if some of my anecdotes line up with some of the literature that these two are both extremely knowledgeable on. Obviously, you guys know that I did carnivore for nearly 2 years. This was my prior diet to working with Jared over the past 2 months. As you guys can see, it was fairly limited to much less foods. What would you guys say is the main primary downfall from a hypertrophy standpoint of the carnivore diet?
Huh. I just noticed this is zero carbs.
Yeah. Right here is post-training carbs. None.
Not applicable.
The carbs also not available. Love it. Had some fruits in there. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So being that Mike was actually a sports nutrition scientist for, was it Olympic weightlifting? Who was it? USA Weightlifting?
We are the official nutrition people for USA Weightlifting.
Yeah. And then you did something.
And I was sport nutrition consultant for the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Johnson City, Tennessee for weightlifting and for cycling.
Yeah.
So, performance nutrition was my job.
Yes. So I'll talk about the implementation and structure of the diet that I did and why I did it. Psychological reasonings, kind of some of the stuff we talked about yesterday. I'll talk about some of the why it was a slower introduction, things like that. And then Mike can probably speak toward the performance aspect of why carbohydrates are really good and all the literature surrounding that. So we could definitely start with that if Mike wants to.
We're supposed to talk smack about the carnivore diet first, yes?
If you'd like to talk smack, yes.
Oh, sorry. Have a level-headed critique.
There you go.
So on the plus side, you're eating absolutely enough protein on the carnivore diet, which is really great. And in broad strokes, 3 meals a day, evenly spaced, especially if those meals are very high in protein and very high in fat, which they were, means you're getting a steady stream of amino acids to your muscles all day long.
Especially with the fast, long digestion.
Exactly. So really, you're not under eating protein. The supply of raw materials for construction of muscle tissue is strong. And so that's really good. Another benefit is you are getting lots of saturated fats, which at least at some minimum level and above support a great hormone balance and testosterone production. So that's a very good thing. And so in those regards, assuming that your calories were sufficient, it's not a terrible diet for muscle growth. Big problem was that during the time that you ran the diet, I don't believe you gained much weight. Is that correct?
It was difficult to consume enough food too because it was so high in protein.
Yes. Protein is satiating.
Yeah, very.
High level of protein plus fat together are very satiating for the calories. And so a lot of people will do variations of the carnivore diet specifically to help them not eat as much food. And while such a diet can keep you lean and keep you at a low body weight without much effort, because, you know, someone's like, all right, eat whatever you want, but it's only meats and fats. You're like, okay, there you go. You're not going to go off the rails and eat too much. That's great for people who have a weight control problem. For people who need to be gaining weight because you've been lean for like ever, and so you don't have a problem with being excessively fat or gaining too quick. Your problem is the opposite problem, that you are in your late teens, which is when you are both joint and connective tissue wise, psychological motivation wise, and hormone and cellular functioning wise, just the most geared up you could ever be to put on slabs of beef.
Right.
And you were not eating enough calories to gain weight during that time. To put in perspective, so how much did you weigh your freshman year of high school?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't weigh myself. Probably, I'm guessing 130.
130. My freshman year of high school, I weighed 100 pounds. I was 5'2". And I gained 20 pounds of tissue every single year of high school. So by the time of my freshman year of college was beginning, I weighed 180. And I did not do this by accident. I put on weight by eating food to an amount that I was at least moderately uncomfortable with. During the summers, when I do more of my gaining than the rest of the time, I did not do things optimally. I would look at food and be like, but then I continued eating. And if I had only eaten no carbohydrates, it would have just been really difficult to put on extra calories, as was for you difficult to do.
Right.
So the main drawback, there are other drawbacks of the carnivore diet in your case, was that its satiating effects and its difficulties of constricting food choices so much prevented you from physically putting on weight. That is the big downside. So there is another world in which you could have rerun the universe and run it back again with your current knowledge. Hypothetically, you could have used a carnivore diet in a hypercaloric condition and actually gained weight. And then you would have seen a decent amount of muscle mass gain with some fat mass, and then we could do some mini cuts to take off the fat. But it would not have been optimal, but it would have been a lot better. So the carnivore stuff was not ideal, but it was okay. What was not okay is that the carnivore diet ended up, through a combination of the carnivore diet plus you just being lean as dope, ended up preventing you from putting on size. And that is because it prevented the imposition of a hypercaloric condition and thus weight gain.
Essentially, throughout the first 2 weeks of us working together, calories equated, I ended up dropping weight after adding in the carbohydrates. Obviously, with adding in carbs, you'd be expecting to, or a lot of people would be expecting to gain weight through water, glycogen source, things like that, filling out. But it was actually the opposite for me. Do you have any idea why that may have been?
My best hypothesis is that because you were eating essentially no carbohydrate, you were
ass off,
training like a monster, you were in a very overreach state. Your total body systemic stress was very high. You were thus in a permanent halfway fight or flight response. That degree of stress in many people, not all, but most, causes a retention of water, particularly under the skin.
Right.
And that can be a lot of water weight, 5 to 10 pounds, no problem. I'm actually balls deep in a diet myself, and I'm carrying a ton of water weight right now. If I took the next 3 or 4 days to eat at maintenance, taking my carbs from 250 a day to 600 a day, I would lose weight at the end of that process. I'd lose 5 pounds. You'd be like, how the hell does that make any sense? I would look way tighter and my muscles will look fuller. I suspect that's what happened to you. It's my best guess, is finally your body got enough carbohydrates. Carbohydrates activate the parasympathetic nervous system preferentially more than other nutrients do. So carbs tend to reduce cortisol more than the other nutrients, which is a direct stress hormone. And when they do that, your body's like, oh, okay, oh my God, we're not fight or flight anymore. Once you're not fight or flight, a lot of that body water will start to drop off. And something you probably noticed was your muscles felt fuller and tighter, but you actually looked leaner because under the skin water had gone away.
Right.
That's my best guess as to why you temporarily lost a whole bunch of body water. I don't think that's necessarily inherent to the carnivore diet that you're running. I think that probably has more to do with the fact that while you were doing really high volume, high frequency training, you also didn't have the carbs and calories to support that sort of training.
Right.
And how many times did you deload or take an active rest phase during?
Never in a years.
Yeah, and you trained hard. And so you ended up being in this kind of like halfway beat to shit state all the time. Tons of inflammation, tons of stress. When the carbs hit, they started healing you up, and that healing resulted in a huge stress reduction. And my best guess is that that's what caused the body water to come off.
Right. And one of the primary benefits that I noticed was my cognitive function was extreme. Like I felt very sharp when I was on the carnivore diet, and I also didn't get sore. So those were two changes that I noticed quite the difference in between the carnivore diet and adding in carbohydrates. Now, a lot of carnivore advocates tout the benefits of, oh, I'm never sore, and also being sharp all the time. As soon as I introduced carbs, the initial change was that I was a little bit brain foggy. And then after about a week period, I was completely fine, pretty much back to normal and pretty sharp. And then I also noticed that through my workouts, even with potentially lower volume, obviously there's some technique modifications and stuff as well, I was actually getting sore. And I had a conversation with Jared and I said, oh, well, is it actually beneficial to not have that soreness like the carnivores or many carnivore advocates preach? And he was talking to me about the benefits of actually getting sore as a signal or as a symptom, I guess, of the training that you're doing. So could you speak a little bit to what that is indicative of, that little level of soreness or that adjustment in soreness after adding in carbohydrates?
Yeah, it at least shows you that there's some sort of correlation of eating carbohydrates and what that does as far as actually creating that muscular damage and creating or kickstarting the processes necessary to build the lean tissue. So it's like when I go hypercaloric, I immediately also get a lot more sore. When I'm deep into contest prep, I also notice that I'm not getting a lot of soreness. That's not inherently a good thing. Yeah. Getting excessively sore or even just detecting soreness in the muscle tissue isn't also a surefire way to say, hey, I'm definitely building lean muscle. But it's definitely something that we can, with the data on it, say, it's probably a good idea if you're a little sore and your frequency of training is correct and everything like that. So when you increased the carbohydrates, you have more of those materials to kind of kickstart that process. Right. So and this happened to me recently, actually, when I went from training super hard, no carbohydrates at the very end of my contest prep to increasing my carbs, my hamstrings were sore for like 4 days.
Right.
That's kind of another reason why I shot those in really slowly. The parasympathetic response that Mike was talking about, psychologically, you not being excessively brain foggy and then not making you overly sore, like going from 0 carbs to 500 grams of carbs a day with the training that you were doing, you would have just been sore for like 2 weeks. And an over amount of soreness can be a bad thing. So we didn't want to do that to you. But
so obviously there's been a major shift. I went from essentially consuming less than 10 grams of carbs a day, and that was just from obviously just animal foods, to now upwards of 500 grams of carbs per day, 3,500 to 3,600 calories depending on the day. Before, I was doing a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to fat, which obviously had me consuming 250 grams of protein at 140 pounds body weight, which obviously was just unnecessary. But at the time, I was thinking, if I need to get more food in, it's essentially impossible without downing tablespoons of tallow to get more fat than protein, or keep your protein at 1 gram per pound or even less of body weight. So when you were adding those carbs back in, what was going through your head as far as how you were like being methodical about doing it?
Yeah, basically just those things that I discussed with you. So we decreased some protein, decreased some fat, made the difference in carbohydrates. You had that, let's say, rinsing of cortisol and, this sympathetic response that was always occurring. Maybe you lost, like, let's say 4 pounds of body weight, but that was like, 6 pounds of water came off. And then intramuscularly, you got like 4 pounds of tissue,
Right.
or whatever it was. So I didn't want to slam you with carbohydrates. You experienced that, like what we talked about yesterday, like that 2 o'clock kind of like crash where you eat the carbs and they're not around your training, or you didn't train that day, and then you're just like sitting around groggy all day, which is like what I'm experiencing now because I was so overreached and overtrained.
Right.
So taking into consideration that you were training so hard for so long, no carbohydrates, no soreness, you were pretty sharp because you had adjusted, you were using ketones mostly. We didn't want to just bum rush you with, like I said, again, 500 grams of carbs or something crazy like that, even though I knew you could technically handle that. Like at your body weight, for you massing, putting on a pound a week, with where I had your fats, that probably would have been a fine amount of carbohydrates to push you to.
Right.
We weren't aware of where your mind was quite yet with like body image as well. And that was another thing as a coach that I had to take into consideration. So we had that conversation slightly after. I was like, hey, I'm going to increase your carbs slowly. And I was like, how is you, like, being this young person coming up in the industry and always having to be sharp and lean for social media, what is your mind like around your body image? And we were kind of like, I'm really honestly cool with whatever happens.
Right.
So like, okay, cool. So we're going to go to like 275. We'll see how you feel. Because since you have been lean and everything,
275 what?
Carbs. Since you had been lean for so long, maybe you still didn't really know. Like if I would have just went to 500, you did gain that like 5 pounds of water. You weren't as sharp in pictures and stuff. Maybe you would have had some kind of like, oh shit, maybe I do give a fuck.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So I just still didn't want to do it, and we would just kind of increase slowly. And I think that was, it definitely helped quite a bit, and you're just like full as hell and lean still. So now we're going to really push hard.
Going into my current nutrition, obviously we've adjusted to doing that pre, intra, and post training food or nutrition in general. That's one of the major changes that I've had is I've gone from 3 meals a day to upwards of 6, technically, or 5 with an intra shake. What would you say are the primary benefits to having that pre, intra, post workout nutrition, and what is the level of that effect? Is it great? Is it minimal?
So generally, if you have a high degree of round-the-clock carbohydrate consumption, your glycogen stores in your muscles stay fuller than if you have lower or no carbohydrate consumption. There is a mechanism by which various cellular elements in your body detect glycogen and to use it as a gatekeeping switch for muscle growth. If your glycogen is low, then there are a few systems that basically go, we're not primed for muscle growth. Let's not even activate muscle growth much in response to training, which is one of the reasons why you don't get very sore from training. If your glycogen is high, no matter when you eat your food, but round the clock, you're eating carbs every day, you're eating plenty, your intramuscular store of carbohydrate glycogen is higher. When glycogen is detected by your cells as being high in the muscle, your muscles go, you know what, actually, this looks really good. Let's grow more muscle, and it actually uncorks the process of muscle. There's direct. So we know that carbs potentiate muscle. Indirectly, we know that the number of bodybuilders that have ever gotten their biggest on a carnivore diet, I believe, stands at maybe actually 0 or a nominal number of people. Right. So it's curious how everyone who's enormous eats tons of carbs. And over the generations, the industry has floated towards the guys who are the biggest.
Insulin usage.
They use insulin to drive even more carbohydrates in. Carbs seem to be a really big deal because they probably have insulin. Has 2 effects we know about. One is it has a mild anabolic effect. So it has a small effect of actually increasing how much muscle you eat. And if you're eating protein and fat, your insulin secretion, the total amount of insulin exposure your cells get, your muscle cells, is very, very low.
That's one of the things that many of the carnivore advocates tout is that, it's low insulin. So it's almost like a demonization of insulin in the carnivore space.
Yes. What I can get to that by itself is super fucking wrong. But, guys in the pro ranks don't use 80 units of insulin a day because it's bad for muscle growth.
Right.
Opposite. It's a miracle drug for muscle growth. So on the one hand, insulin is mildly anabolic. And you say, okay, mildly. However, it is powerfully anti-catabolic, which means that all muscle growth results from a daily balance of however much you're growing and however little you're losing. Very easy analogy here. How do you accumulate wealth over time? There's always two-factor model. How much income you draw, anabolism, and how little you spend, anti-catabolism. Because if you're making that Lamborghini money, as I'm known to make, actually buy a lot of Lamborghinis, which I actually just have 0 of them. You stayed at my house for a few days, no Lamborghinis yet. And then, if you buy a lot of Lambos, you could be making millions and just have nothing to show for it at the end of the day except an insanely depreciating car that sits in your garage. So just the same way, while insulin at normal human amounts naturally secreted from carbs isn't going to drive a ton of muscle growth, it is around the clock going to prevent lots of muscle loss. And it's not like you're primed for muscle loss all the time on a hypercaloric diet, but catabolism is something that happens all the time because tissue turns over. All of your muscles are always a little bit anabolic and a little bit catabolic. They exchange their elements. Your muscles are always being constructed and reconstructed all the time. If you can take the degree of construction and elevate it a little, but you take the degree of destruction of the muscle and you elevate it a lot, or sorry, reduce it a lot, that expands the total window of net muscle growth over time, which means that insulin and carbohydrates together end up growing a substantial amount of muscle. But the benefits don't end there. There are at least a few more. One is that if you have a high degree of intramuscular glycogen storage, you can just do more reps and more sets and recover better between workouts. Your workload goes up. Your productive ability to train goes up. There's another benefit. It's been shown time and time again now that metabolites, that nasty burn at the end of a set, some of those metabolites like lactate are hypertrophic. Now lactate is a byproduct of glucose metabolism. If you're running on ketones, you don't produce as much lactate, which ultra endurance runners sometimes do a little bit better than you would expect on low carb diets because they don't get the pump and the burn when they're running, which when you're running is a fucking disaster. You want to avoid that completely in an ultra run. You're running 100 miles, it better feel like walking the whole time. If you get a ton of carbs in, you may, untrained, if you're not used to them, you may get like quad pump after 15 miles and you're like, this is bad news. Yeah. But that same quad pump that results from a ton of metabolites being generated from those carbs being broken down, that actually in part causes the muscle growth response. So not only are you able to lift bigger weights to impose more tension in any one rep, you're able to do more reps and more sets, which imposes more volume, which is hugely hypertrophic. And also those carbohydrates are burned and metabolites result, and those metabolites like lactate themselves also stimulate anabolism. Just a many compartment, many factor model to boost. Every one of those is just a little bit more muscle. But that shit adds up over time.
For years.
So, oh yeah. Another thing is carbohydrates are the preferred fuel of the nervous system, specifically glucose. And when you have a high degree of glucose available, you can train harder. So if you have specifically pre-workout carbohydrates and you have a nice level of glucose in your bloodstream when you go on a train, bro, like you can fucking go harder psychologically. If your workouts take longer and you have an intra-workout carb shake, and endurance athletes swear by this, you can continue to finish out the workouts better. If you don't have a shake in your workouts, you'll have great workouts, but you'll have slightly better end of the workout if you have a workout shake. And then post-workout, your muscles are super sensitive to carbohydrates and their uptake, which can slam more glycogen in, which leads to that glycogen causing an opening up of muscle growth response. And that means that post-workout, it's a really critical to have that. Also post-workout, you have an increase in muscle breakdown. It's not a terrible thing, but over time it will cost you some potential gains. A protein plus carbohydrate shake or kids cereal or whatever, a few apples, whatever you eat, that level of protein is always going to be there because carnivore is plenty of protein, but the added carbohydrate is so anti-catabolic that it prevents needless post-workout muscle loss. Because post-workout, you'll get lots of gain, but also a little bit of loss. This will keep the gain a little bit higher, but really reduce the loss, making the whole equation just broader for more muscle gain. Those workout window elements, if you're full of glycogen, aren't a big deal. So if you're consuming 600 grams of carbs a day, but not a lot in your workout window, you'll still get amazing results. But especially if you're not consuming lots of carbs, that workout window becomes the most critical part of the workout. And if you want just a few percentage points more gains, That's a big deal. And to that percentage point gains thing, I'll say this. Almost all the studies on how nutrition affects gains are conducted on beginners. They are so prone to growth because they're fucking new that they max all their system throughput out completely in most cases. And it's actually very difficult to detect differences in training. I'll go so far as to say this. There is a lit review on this. In the first 3 weeks of training, cardio for new people and lifting causes a roughly same amount of muscle. But think about when you first start doing cardio, running or cycling, you're fucking sore all the time. You get pumps from it. Not an accident. So when we're testing carbs versus low carbs in those people, well, fuck, they grow muscle anyway. But you've been training since you were 13 years old. After age 18 or so, those small differences between carbs and no carbs can for you mean 50% muscle gain differences.
That's the biggest difference I noticed.
Right, it's huge because you're working at really fine margins. It's like if you have two airplanes, if you see a fighter jet fly by and it's flying at 1,800 miles an hour, let's do something more realistic, have a fucking military, 1,200 miles an hour. And you're like, whoa, that's so fast. You see another one fly by at 1,400 miles an hour. You're like, oh, that's so fast. And someone's like, well, which one's better? You're like, they're both so fast. Who cares? Like, yeah, compared to a tank or a person. But 200 miles an hour extra for the faster fighter jet is all the difference to win 90% of dogfights because it can circle around faster, shoot its missiles. And you're like, if the one plane is going 1,200 miles an hour, the other plane's going 1,400 miles an hour, it's a fight between something that effectively is going standing still and 200 miles.
Right.
If you were in a fight against a Lamborghini with a 50 cal on it, and you're standing there with a 50 cal, it can go 200 miles an hour, you're going to die. It's going to circle around you and find you, bad news. So even though both are really fast in absolute terms, that small difference, and it is small, makes a huge difference. If you're an athlete pushing themselves to the maximum, differences in carbs versus no carbs in an untrained population in the studies could be 5% muscle growth. For you, that's 50% muscle growth, or 80% muscle growth, or I no longer detect any muscle growth versus, oh my God, I'm growing muscle for the first time in a year.
That was the biggest difference that I noticed was I had progressed for almost 5 years of training, 13 to 18, about using a low carb ketogenic and carnivore, eventually carnivore approach. After I hit 18 years old, I noticed this plateau where my strength was stagnant. My muscle building was not progressing as much as I'd like it to. And I went through about a year of questioning, why isn't this working? What's going on? Because it had worked so well up until that point. So I think that's like a lot of my viewers are obviously young viewers. They're teenagers getting into it. They have this whole idea of newbie gains, and it's cool because you start packing on tissue really fast. But then after a certain point, it becomes discouraging because you don't know what's happening. Why is this slowing down? Which is obviously a natural thing that's going to happen as you get later into your training and lifting journey. So that implementation of carbohydrates after so long of not having it and eventually getting to a point where I was, plateaued or regressing in strength and muscle building, that was what I needed to progress my training more. And Jared saw in the first 5 days, he posted on his Instagram a wall the photo of the difference between not having carbohydrates, having carbohydrates. And you were there when we were filming in Toronto and I didn't have carbs at the time. You're saying, well, actually throughout the workout, your pump was decreasing.
I just didn't attack the pump at all.
Exactly.
It's like, sure hope he's okay.
Yeah. And so initially I was able to work like that, which I'm sure is the same when you're in a hypercaloric state and then you go to a diet where you're able to progress for a certain period of time. But then eventually, as you get to the end of that diet, the reintroduction of carbohydrates allows you to continue to fill out and peak for the show. So obviously this is great having all the science and the knowledge behind it. What would you say for I'm sure I have some carnivore viewers on here. I'm sure I have some just normal viewers, but anybody who's looking to reintroduce carbohydrates, obviously we had a strategic plan looking at adding in, 10 grams of carbs per meal every 2 weeks or so. Is there a percentage rate of gain that you suggest for someone going from a cutting phase or even a maintenance phase into a bulk who's in a similar situation as me where they're on a low carbohydrate diet initially?
Well, percentage rates of gain in that discussion are slightly different because depending on how long they've been doing the carnivore diet or ketogenic diet, they're going to gain more glycogen or water more rapidly. So if you've been doing it for a very, very long time, something similar to what we did is very intelligent. If you've been doing it for like a couple months and you're like, dude, fuck this, just like a percent rate like gain for the first like couple weeks is absolutely fine, especially if you were dieting down super fucking hard.
Yeah.
So somebody who's going from a super massive cutting diet into maintenance or trying to get out of that super harsh low body fat percentage realm, that percent gain is absolutely fucking fine right out of the gate. Like the reverse dieting stuff is silly. You don't need to do it. You can go ahead and try to get your body fat back up from like 5% to 8 or 9% right away. It's absolutely okay. If you're coming from a carnivore diet and you were dieting down the carnivore diet and you had mastered a carnivore diet and whatever, like I said, something like what we did is really good. Maybe just replace something that Tristyn did, we didn't talk about yet. He kind of was already implementing this strategy where he was doing fruits and stuff around his workouts, where he was doing like 100 grams of carbs around the workout, mostly fruits, things like that, implementing some vegetables. And I just took that and we added to it a little bit, just like pair your workout, just like we just said. Again, that's just the best time to do it. So you're taking the carbs and you're going in, you're training really hard, which is a catabolic process. And then since you have those carbohydrates readily available, you're now promoting that anabolism again with the protein that you're taking in. So something like that structure is a really good idea. And if you're just coming out of a diet and you're super fucking lean, go ahead and get your body fat back up to a healthy percentage. It's a pretty intelligent idea. But Mike, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. If you're doing a carnivore or low carb diet, you want to try experimenting with carbs. You got to remember that a lot of the people that like keto and like carnivore, their idea of what carbs were is when they would like eat muffins at the office meeting and feel like shit. Well, that's because there's tons of junk, and junk doesn't make you feel good. So what I would start first if I was carnivore is I would start with most meals of the day adding in some green veggies. Veggies are almost unanimously by every medical and nutritional organization deemed as intensely and insanely healthy. The fiber is good for your health. There's tons of phytonutrients in plants that are amazing for your health. It's just going to make you better at everything. It's going to improve your digestive health, get rid of the shit a lot more. That's fun, you know, that whole thing. And then so if that works well for a week or two, okay, now you can start to introduce something like some fruits. Fruits are typically very slow digesting, apples, pears, peaches, etc. Very low glycemic. You're not going to get this crazy sugar high and crazy sugar crash. You probably won't feel super lethargic. You could, but if you feel lethargic when introducing healthy carbs like that in a very small amount, you need to just ramp up and eat more of them and take like a week off of training and sleep a lot because you're very overreached.
Right.
Usually when you start introducing, 1 or 2 pieces of fruit per meal, you're going to be able to have like eye laser superpowers. Your cognition is going to improve because again, the brain likes blood glucose. If you go to a neuroscience professor, they say I have a very important exam coming up in 4 hours. I need to be my best. No one's going to tell you not to eat carbs. They're going to say, make sure to eat some healthy, slow digested carbs so you have plenty of mental energy for your day. When people say carbs make me groggy, they almost always mean like Swedish fish or fucking goldfish or fish of any kind that are made of carbs. Just pie, tons of white bread or something like that. Yeah, all that stuff, it's not fair play. It's like telling someone that you're on a like the carnivore diet didn't work for you, and they're like, what do you eat? You're like, I mean, mostly Spam and like sausage links. They're like, bologna. Right, yeah, that's fair. Bologna. It's like the worst shit ever. Of course, how many people eat that shit? They eat bologna, like that's what they're gonna do. Obviously, that's not cutting the carnivore diet some slack. Eat some nice, healthy fucking, some great organ meats, some great thick slabs of fatty meat from like pasture-raised cows. Right. You're not going to feel terrible. You're going to feel great. So start with healthy carbs like that, some pieces of fruit. As that you feel better with that, maybe you can introduce some more carbs like Jared is saying, take another ramp and go to some grains. Whole grains are, again, incredibly healthy. If you do look at PubMed, any literature reviews, you have health, just type in Google. Health benefits of whole grain comprehensive literature review or meta-analysis or lit review. You're going to get so many studies, you'll be up to your eyes in studies. Whole grains are like a fucking panacea. They do unbelievable things to your body that are awesome. And so you add in brown rice, you add in sweet potatoes, you add in whole wheat pasta, you add in some whole grain breads with some chia seeds and shit like that in there, the good stuff, that hipster shit. And all of a sudden, your blood glucose is incredibly stable. Your mental energy is amazing. Your workout energy is awesome. There's no crash. There's no psychotic glucose rush. It's all good. And then if you want, later in your muscle gain phase, you can add in some regular potatoes. You can add in some white rice, specifically pre and post workout. You can even do some kids' sugary cereal, if you're onto that sort of thing, like Jared and I are. That's not like we eat kids' cereal every fucking meal of the day. It's just post workout when you need that fast carb, that insulin spike.
Right.
So mostly you just slowly go from veggies, then add fruits, then add whole grains, and then all of a sudden you're just eating a really good, healthy diet that includes all the great carnivore meats that you were eating with some of those healthy saturated fats in the meats that you're laying on top of that a lot of other stuff. And if you like how that feels, maybe you can switch a little bit to leaner meats and try some healthy plant fats, avocados, avocado oil, olive oil. You can try nut butters. Natural nut butters are great. Nuts. I mean, these are foods that are incredibly healthy, incredibly cognition boosting, incredibly performance boosting. And the scientific literature on them is like a 97-3 ratio of they're awesome versus some people just don't gel with them.
Right.
And I think a lot of folks who come to carnivore really just have like some pretty serious food aversions or allergies that they're dealing with, and they'll wipe an entire food group off the face of the earth where they should have just gone to carnivore as an elimination diet and then slowly try to reintroduce individual foods back, see which veggies, which fruits, which grains, which healthy fats gel well with them, and which ones maybe don't, and then find out over time, okay, I don't eat these foods, but all these other foods I can't eat. It improves your diversity of food that you're eating. It's objectively healthier for you, and almost all nutritionists agree. And another thing is like, yeah, the vegans are really pervasive in the nutrition industry. And yes, they're a lot of times ideologically biased. Yes, they will overvalue the amount of health benefit of plant foods. Yes, they will purposefully undervalue, in an insidious way, how much animal foods can be good for you. There's this sort of political divide where most carnivores are just like all conservatives, and they think that the entire nutritional establishment is just the same left-leaning, cuck, liberal vegans, and they're not entirely wrong. But the mainstream, non-politically biased, like Jared and I are libertarians. We don't give a flying fuck. We hate extreme SJWs and insane conservatives just the same. And we're here to tell you that the mainstream of science shows that you can eat all meats and be very healthy, and you can eat all plants and be insanely healthy if you just stick to minimally processed, awesome foods, meats that are minimally processed, and you do veggies, and you do fruits, and you do whole grains, and you do healthy fats. And there's no political bias to that at all. So no, you don't have to switch to veganism. And if carnivore works great for you, God bless you, it's awesome. But if you're curious, try to slowly introduce some plant foods, the ones that work well for you, and you could a year later be like, man, I really missed out on a lot of awesome food for no good reason at all.
I think that's the biggest thing, is that there's a demonization of all these things. It's like, you gotta be afraid of insulin, now you gotta be afraid of vegetables and fruits and carbohydrates, and so people are become afraid to just experiment for themselves. That's what I've always preached to my channel, and people get upset with me because I was doing a carnivore diet for some time as if I was pushing it to people. But the truth is, I was 13 to 20 years old, still learning and experimenting for myself. So that's the biggest thing, is that you need to experiment and see what foods work for you. And that was a big thing with re-implementing carbohydrates, was finding what foods are good at my digestion, which is obviously important when we're increasing food to the level that we are, and then what foods I feel best with on a daily basis. So for any of you viewers watching, hopefully you're able to learn something from both Jared Feather as well as Dr. Mike Israetel. Follow both of these guys on all of their individual social medias, as well as the Renaissance Periodization channel. They just released, I'm happy to be a part of it, the RPI Hypertrophy app, which is absolutely amazing. If you guys want to help Mike get even closer to his Lamborghini collection and help myself and Jared get Toyota Corollas,
Thank you.
and make sure to subscribe to that. You can use my code Lee, and I believe you'll get yourself a good discount on it. It's unlike anything I've ever used, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's cool to have a doctor, a scientist, all behind the app, as well as all these other people who have tons of training knowledge. So they've put that app together, and it's absolutely amazing. Make sure you guys check it out. Until next time, no longer carnivore. Tristyn Lee, signing out.